Do you get anxious when you have to be in front of an audience? Well, today's guest, Dayne, has sung in front of millions, yet had to find a way to cope with agoraphobia. Taylor, welcome to Lifestyle Magazine. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Now, I want to talk about the agoraphobia and some other things, but
right into the lion's den.
Yeah, but let's just take a step back and let's talk about your career. You've had an amazing career. I don't think I could turn on my radio back when I was in high school or college and not hear Taylor Dayne. So many #1 hits. How did you get started?
Well, professionally, to get started, I mean, really a hit record is really what gets you started.
Yeah.
But I was in high school, junior high, and music was my life. And I was always in every band and recording and really trying to get that break. And growing up in New York really helped.
How young were you when you had your first recording deal and started?
My first recording, really, I would say 19, and that was two 12-inch deals that I did with my partner, Rick Wake. And then the fruits of our labor, we went into he said, we need a crossover record, and we came up with Tell It to My Heart, and the rest is history. That got signed, and that was my first single with a major label.
Yeah, Tell It to My Heart hit. I remember that really clearly, and then everything exploded. Yeah. Now you're out there on stages with thousands and thousands of people listening. What was that experience like?
Well, this is 1988, 1987. There is no cell phone. There is no internet. There is no other way of communicating with people except live shows, right?
Right.
Phone, television. There was MTV, and this was obviously a huge medium. So through videos, through performances. So, but I have to say, the first time I really was on stage in a big tour, I was opening for Michael Jackson, and that was in the Bad tour. So within a month or two of the single dropping. Otherwise, everything else was just radio shows and promotion.
You're still young. You're thrust into this big environment. What was that life like? What changed in your life at that time?
Everything changes.
Yeah.
You're no longer anonymous. You're no longer at a pace of, you're no longer at your own time, your own, everything has changed. Yeah. You no longer walk through the street and have that sort of anonymity. And those are the beautiful and scary moments, when you're young like that and you're not trained on any level to really understand what that's going to be like for your body, for your psyche. So things are coming in at rapid speed. I can promise you that.
Yeah.
And you have to make very quick decisions.
Absolutely. What were some of the decisions that you had to make?
Well, by the first record, I had no manager. The first single, I didn't have a manager in place or an agent. Like, think, really, it was a 12-inch deal. Yeah. And then they put it out. It's not like they said, we're going to get all behind this. And then it just started exploding. And then they're like, the demands, and you don't have a certain management in place. The demands were, I really had to get a manager and agent together very quick, and an attorney. These are things like, yes, absolutely.
At 19 years old, you had such a beautiful, mature, iconic voice already.
19, 20, yeah. I know, because when I listened to I'll Always Love You, you're right. It was something else. Yeah. And that's like coming from a 21-year-old, that kind of, but that is the way music is. We express it. It's such we honor it from our youth. It's a moment in time. But yeah, I too myself listen to that vocal and I go, wow, it just sounds.
There's a maturity to it.
Such a maturity. There's a wise, wisdom to it. But it comes from it comes from a channel place as well. Yeah. You have to know that,
Well, and that's one of your gifts, is being able to express that internal emotion and heart of the song. And I think that's why.
That's my thing.
Yeah, it's your thing. It's why people gravitated to you so quickly.
It's so important for me to make sure it wasn't just a lyric on a page, to convey the message of a song. And I didn't write every song I've ever sung. And to get these words from some of the greatest songwriters of all time and music, and delivering that and having this emotional reciprocity has always been the most dynamic part of being a musician, and being on stage too, and watching that happen in live.
Not just a musician, an artist, because I always say the difference between art and not art is art always evokes emotion, and not art doesn't. So you're not just singing notes correctly, or you're not just trying to find a tone or a tenor to your voice that people like the sound, there's got to be something behind it to make it art, and you really captured that.
Think about it. It evokes something, right?
Yeah.
An emotion, a state, but you remember that.
Yeah.
Depending on where you were at those moments in your life, when I was 15, 16, earlier, I'll never forget the artists that were my stakes were so high with some of these artists, and those are the memories, and that's why we have such a sensorial connection with music. And I know where I was, who I was with, and what I was wearing oftentimes, you know? And our senses are just so tied into music, art, what we see, film.
Yeah. Yeah, I call those mile marker moments, because those are moments you never forget. It's just these marks in your life.
Well, you told me you came into my dressing room and you told me where you were.
Absolutely.
And you heard my music.
Absolutely. High school.
I'm sure you know who you were with too.
Absolutely.
You remember.
Absolutely. Being young, your family had to be impacted by this too. What went through your folks' mind?
Well, I grew up in New York. By 18, I was certainly not living at home anymore. We were already had the apartment, was going to college, you know, doing, every band I was in and what I was doing was in New York City. So I would have to say my parents were so supportive on one level, but they were completely empty nesting and really just going on with their lives, you know, moving and shaking. And things were happening at such a warp speed. And I was in the city and in my own apartment. And
there was a disconnect at that time. And in many ways, you were alone in this next stage of your career.
You just can't imagine. I was alone unless it was with some of the musicians that I was working with. And that's that family that you bring with you on the road. And one of them was Diane Jones, was a musician, a background singer. I was working with her at a Russian club, and just some of the you know, you're on a tour bus literally or traveling. These are your family, your people.
We've got to take a break, but I want to talk more about this and kind of the effects of how it affected your life. When we come back, we'll continue this conversation with Taylor Dayne and learn how she dealt with agoraphobia despite performing in front of so many people. You don't want to miss it. We'll be right back. We're back, and joining us is our attitude key specialist, Lionel Mark LaMountain. Now, Taylor, we talked about the fact here you're performing in front of millions of people, and yet you're suffering with agoraphobia. Most people don't even know what agoraphobia is. What was it?
I'm sure a lot of people know what panic attacks are. At this point in their lives, they've experienced it. Anxiety, high states of anxiety, certainly any teenage girl I ever spoke to. And when I was going through, you know, by 13, 14, 15, the expectations, what we put on ourselves. And between bulimia and having panic attacks, which was soon diagnosed for me as having some sort of agoraphobia, because God forbid I should go to the same place where I had a panic attack. And that's kind of what happens. Your world gets a little smaller as you determine that's not safe, that's not safe, being there is not safe, leaving my home's not safe. It can get as bad as that.
You know, you said some pretty amazing, strong things when it comes to fear. And you said fear is a choice. And I don't know how much of your story people know unless they've read your memoirs and everything like that. And I don't know how much you want to share. But agoraphobia, it's a massive thing. But there are a lot of things that led up to that are from when you were younger that you talked about. What do you mean by fear is a choice? And how can we choose to not let fear hold us back? It didn't hold you back, you know, and what did you do to...
It could have been, okay, being stuck in my home, not the freedom of performing live, knowing what it felt like, watching the people that I was inspired by, looking at Patti Benatar or Chrissy Hind or Deborah Harry and seeing them on stage. That was not an option for me to lose my life to this debilitating fear. And it's not something you could see on the outside, but it's a state of mental anxiety and anguish that you cannot, and a panic attack is real. I put it in a box finally. I saw what it was, I see what it was, and then when somebody told me, therapist, this won't kill you. You will not die from a panic attack. I just suddenly stopped. I said, I'll die if I get on that plane. I'll die if I go on that bridge and I'm stuck. What if I'm stuck? And it's not just, it's because you're away from anything that's safe, right? That those places. And that can be a person you're safe with. So it ended up being a safety zone of a person, my home. But I did a behavioral modification process. And
what was that like?
Yeah, they'd take me one stop at a time on a train. One stop at a time, if I could even do that, to driving an exit or two on the freeway.
How hard was that at first, one stop at a time or one exit at a time? Was that really, really hard?
With somebody I didn't know in the vehicle. It was very hard. We had rubber bands, anything to stop
Oh,
the thought.
interrupting
Stop
that.
you have to interrupt the negative thought. You have to replace it, and you have to stop that and understand. Take your breath, a lot of breathing exercises.
So you're doing this the whole time you're going through those one stops, one stop.
Wow.
And then the momentum picks up, and you start. It's really, you're just building the muscle of, it's literally neurotransmitters going off like wackadoo in your mind. But honestly, it really was something that I physically put in a box, and then I realized it won't kill me, it won't this, but I'll never have the life I want and desire, and it will kill me.
How long?
That would devastate me.
How long did that whole process take to go through that?
Between doing 13 weeks, it was a process, 13 weeks with an individual counselor, and then I went into I went into a group of other I did group therapy for another 2 years.
2 years.
Even when I was famous.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did, and I kept up with this group because it was my treatment, my health care, my salvation.
That's one of the best ways to find solutions is in community. And I'm sure you probably
continue your process, because it never stops, right? Especially something like this where it was such rapid. But I promise you, not since then have I had that type of, I've certainly had depression and other things that I've gone with, but not that kind of debilitating anxiety where it prevented me from, where I'm sure you know many people in your life, although they've not admitted to it, prevents them from doing many things. Panic attacks, anxiety, fear of.
All these traumas.
So you really want to be able to narrow it down instead of taking it all over the world, the fear of the world. You want to be able to put it in a box, and that's kind of what I did.
That's wonderful. We've got to take a break,
No problem.
but when we come back, we'll talk with Taylor on how her fight with anxiety has helped her to be a better mom and to also help other people. So you don't want to miss it.
Stress is a part of life. There's work, family, and friends, and to-do lists. It never ends. But one way to have less stress is to take charge of your morning routine. Consider starting your day with a walk, journaling, or meditation. Relax your mind and soul. Unlock your best life by enjoying a few minutes of self-care first thing in the morning to have a happier and a more peaceful day.
Welcome back. We're here with Taylor Dayne. Now, Taylor, going through all of this had to affect your family, how you decided to parent. How did this affect you?
With my children.
Yeah.
Woo. Listen, they're in my kids are 19 now, so I'm in the ugly phase. And 19's like, now I don't have to see them all the time because they have their own apartment, they're living together. God knows what COVID did to the family unit. It brought us closer together, but it also we were on top of each other a lot as well.
Yeah.
I wasn't traveling as much. But I will say that, of course, I see so much more in my daughter than my son. Look, we have to talk about the DNA of things. We have to talk about the family history of these kind of, do they transfer on? And my daughter definitely suffers from anxiety. She suffers massively from things that I couldn't even define and tell you. At 2 years old, 3 years old in nursery school, she wouldn't get up to perform, but she's a twin, not unless her brother was there, not unless somebody else was with her. And then, of course, going through, school and just the things that a lot of young people in general, and we didn't have these social media platforms, and they share a lot of information that wasn't available. And that's tricky stuff. So how is it to be a mom? Have they given me hall passes all the time? Definitely not. And am I perfect? Hardly. Not at all. And as a parent, if I found, because of my upbringing and how I handled my own anxiety, it made me far more strict with them and far more having to be in control. And that's my issues, right? I have to be very much in control.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing right there, because especially lately, we've seen how out of control we can be. There are things beyond our control. And you mentioned something previously in an earlier segment about safety zones. So in this world of chaos, where things can be taken away from you through no fault of your own, through a public health thing or a leader or whatever it might be, how can you use safety zones to build certainty and control into your life? How did you do it? How can we do it today when the world's we feel at the mercy of the world, but we're not always at the mercy of how we live our life? You faced your fear with the safety zones and things.
I did, and that was the fearful place to be, when you cannot take care of yourself. that is the first stage of survival, a human being, right?
Yes,
and
yes.
and I had to learn, unfortunately, as a very young person, that my parents, the people that were in that position to take care of me, couldn't take care of me. I can promise you that what you're saying is absolutely 100% true. A safety zone for me then was a person or a place.
Place where-
And they talk about this when I was in session, that is who you'd take with you everywhere. Like, I could go on a plane with him.
So you choose the
This was a-
person you want to be your safety zone then,
Yeah,
or the
it
place.
was generally my boyfriend at the time,
Okay.
or that person, that I was closest with.
Okay.
It wasn't my family then. It wasn't like that. Being a mom, I've also, and now where I am in my life, like I said, I've never gone back and suffered that way again. I've never had panic attacks like that anymore. It's almost, my body adjusted, my mental state adjusted to it. So you have to,
Did the stage become a safety zone?
yes, it's a pattern, right? It's a learned pattern, and it was a learned response. And of course, yes,
Right.
I was winning at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've had to wrestle with all this, come to, solutions for the anxiety. Did you ever discover where this anxiety came from?
I had a very interesting upbringing. My father and my mom were very explosive with each other, especially my father. He was very, he was verbally abusive, very violent in the home. He was a great human being, but not until later did I call myself, I wasn't a captured audience anymore.
Yeah.
As a child, and I saw enough, and I was the type of person, I was a middle child, I held everything in. So it wasn't surprising that I started bleeding in my bladder, and they found blood and urine by 4 years old. Wow. Hospitalized then, and going through massive surgery by 5. That fear, that flame, that anger, that rage has to go somewhere. Yeah. And that was my parents. And that was what my childhood looked like, a lot of it. I always was waiting for my dad to explode, on my brother especially, or in the house, or on my mom. There wasn't a lot of safety anywhere. And try that on a child. Try that with anybody. That's a rough place to be.
And that's probably why you're so passionate about safety zones. Creating
the good and the bad. It turns you into a control freak. I try not to, right?
Yeah,
you turn, like my daughter will say, you're so passive aggressive about this. I can already tell, and it turned me also in relationships. It also made me far more rigid.
Yeah.
I guess I don't suffer, but what a process to have to undo a lot of how I have to see it, how it has to be.
Through all the pain, and through all of the fear and the uncertainty, you said something I read. You said you didn't want a regular story. You wanted a big life.
Yeah.
You are just incredible. To create these safety zones, to go through that 13-week thing you talked about.
I had my children through surrogacy 20 years ago. It wasn't even legal anywhere except California and Delaware, and I didn't even understand it. I went for a lipo, consultation, and she's like, "Have a baby." I'm like, "I want one," and she's like, "It was like 90." She goes, "Have a child. Hire a surrogate." I'm like, "What's a surrogate?" And she's like, "I go, I don't have a boyfriend." And she's like, "Who needs a boyfriend? You hire." I'm like, "You don't need a boyfriend." There wasn't like semen banks and like there wasn't eggs being flown. This was not the deal. Wow. And then becoming such an advocate for the LGBTQ community, because my friends that were trying to have children, I was a single parent, and then try doing that when you're not a couple, and there was so many legal things that I went through. So yeah, the big life is there.
Because you went after it. You didn't let anything hold you back.
I'm not a shoulda, coulda, woulda girl.
Yep.
That would have been
That's incredible.
my big. Yeah, and I think that's daunting for a lot of people, but I always say to my girlfriends, you got this, or you got this. If you really want this, you can do it. You hire somebody like this, you'll have somebody there, and it's very possible. Look at Levi and look at Astaria. That part of your life, and if you really want to be an entertainer and be in music and film and TV, then this is what you really need to do. You just have to be so tenacious and never stop.
I imagine with everything that you've overcome, you've been able to help other people. What's some of the advice that you've shared with people?
I think this kind of conversation that we're having, I think, has been so. I've had a couple of girlfriends go on for fertility at much, later times in their life, and actually surrogacy became, as a single mom, most of them are the most daunting. It's so daunting for them to become a single parent. Yeah. And I said, but if you choose that, you're not stuck in something that you're choosing because of fear, of not having the ability to take care of something. See, I learned out of fear of having this so-called take care of you, where it was not taking care of me.
Yeah.
It was not safe.
Yeah.
It looked like it's supposed to be, but it was not. So I had to self-soothe, self-take care, and tried not doing that with drugs, alcohol, all sorts of other things. I tried to do it with earplugs. I go to sleep, I self-soothe, I'm like, bye.
Close out the world.
Bye.
Well, they say
And a
that.
T-shirt over my head. You ever see people like that in planes?
Yes,
Just throw the blanket
saw
over.
one the
They're
other day.
I want out, man. I'm just sleeping. Leave me alone.
Check it out.
I know.
Well, they say that perfect love casts out all fear, and you're absolutely proof of it. Thank you so much for
Oh,
spending
goodness.
time
Thank
with
you so
us
much.
today.
What an interesting conversation to have, not one that I've had very often.
Well, it's been extremely interesting to us too, and to our viewers as well. We've got to take a break now, but hold on. I've got a few final thoughts right after this. Taylor Dayne helped us to understand a very important element of our first key of the Aware Keys, attitude. What you become is directly related to what you've overcome. So tackle your fears with hope and tenacity, and you will discover your best life possible.
For more meaningful life tips and an opportunity to view this show and all other episodes, visit our website at lifestyle.org. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to continuing this journey with you on future episodes of Lifestyle Magazine.